We're on.
We are on.
All right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time of day it is, wherever you are and wherever you're tuning in from later. Welcome. This is Light Magic AI Live, and today we're going to talk about AI use every day for our, the folks of us who have a day grind, a day job, a day hustle, some of our 9-to-5ers. And so many of the use cases that we're seeing that are really easy wins are at the work group level. And we're going to talk about some of the advantages for individual employees, for like talent management, offering, really customized experiences to staff so that they come in and they can be as productive at work as they are at home. We're going to talk about some of the decisions that folks need to kind of step themselves through. Oh, there he is. Do I need to mute? Sorry. Okay. Am I good?
You're good. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And so the focus, sorry about that, everybody. So the focus today is on how we're going to integrate AI at work in 2024, really from the employee's point of view for the most part. What I'm going to do first is kick it over to my colleagues to share their background in AI and the AI revolution, as well as an example of a use case that's like a little piece of low-hanging fruit that folks can bring into their work lives to make things easier and better. So why don't I first kick it over to Sarah Davison.
Hi, everyone. Excited to hang with you all today. And I know there's like so many people that have checked the attending button. So thank you for being here. We appreciate you so much. My favorite use case that I use over and over and over is something that a few of us in the community, you'll know this if you're part of the AI Exchange, we call it the voice paragraph. And what that is essentially training the AI system to sound like you. So I use that all the time. And this really is such a great way for people to understand that you can get AI to sound like your brand, to sound like your tone. It doesn't have to be robotic. So if you understand how to use it, that could be a huge win in terms of how you generate content and interact with your audiences. So I'll kick over popcorn over to Tyler.
Popcorn, I love it. Yeah, like I love keeping it. Mine is about relating to just like the future of work and low-hanging fruit, because like when we get out of our echo chamber of how we work at Light Magic or in this space of community, it's like this is just real. Like what you see of us hanging out is literally how we show up to the office every day. And one of the ways that we just kind of take for granted now is all the different AI assistants that show up into our meetings. Like when we hop into a Zoom call, or when we're doing meeting prep, or when we do meeting like rundowns after the fact. So I know like what my to-do list is or whatnot. And then that lands on whatever Slack channel that it needs to go to. Like when we're reporting stuff, we get that out of the AI assistant that we work, and then the prompt chains that we have afterwards. So it's that seems like something for us that are in this space that do this type of work every day. That's just like, that's not a big deal. But really we've just been doing it for a while. So it's normal for us. But when I talk to anyone that doesn't do this kind of work, and then I'm like, hey, do you care if I record our conversation? And here's why. Like even in person, I'll do that with my phone, because afterwards I'll run it through, because you just, then I can be fully present in the conversation. And the people that like I teach that to, even Rob and Seth are two of my buddies that they're real estate agents. Like when we're sitting there riffing, when we have our meeting, like in-person meeting, I'm like, all right, dudes, I'm going to just like set my phone here in the middle. We're just going to chat. And then from that afterwards, like we can just go and we don't have to worry about taking notes or doing stuff. We're getting right into the work. So that's really powerful once you get into that habit. Yeah.
I would love to dig a little deeper into both of these use cases, and I'll pour one more into it. But the reason why I want to like really share more and even more practical tips for these two use cases of voice and meetings is because they are total game changers. And they're both things that have a little bit of a barrier of like, you've really got to suspend your disbelief. You have to, with regard to the voice and tone thing that we're about to talk about, you really have to kind of approach it with an open mind, believing that these large language models like ChatGPT, for example, can indeed speak in the voice of your brand or yourself or your CEO or your dean, whoever you need to write for, or your board chair, you name it. And I guess what I would say for folks who are tuning in, bear with us, have an open mind. We're going to explain how to make these large language models like ChatGPT talk like your brand and talk like you. And I will drop later on some of the prompts that will allow people to do that. I'm going to kick it over to Sarah, but what I'm going to say is that there are a couple of quick little terms that I want to identify. So LLM is a large language model, and that's just like ChatGPT, or there's something called Claude AI. There's a million. There's Bing, there's Poe, there's Pi, it goes on and on, but let's just for the sake of today think about ChatGPT. So large language model like ChatGPT, and the word prompt means this is information that you're putting into ChatGPT to get it to deliver results back to you. So you will ask it a very specific question in a specific way, and then you get the results back that allow you to do what you want to do. With that, Sarah, can I hand it over to you? And by the way, please, everybody, drop comments. We're going to pin some. If you have questions, if you have use cases, drop them down below. And if you're watching on the replay, still drop them, because we go back and see later your comments and we can reach back out to you. So please do.
Fab, thank you. And if I keep looking down or looking to the side, it's because I want to be in the comments with everybody. So I'm not distracted and I'm actually really engaged. But yeah, I think one of the biggest aha moments for me, I think in terms of understanding like how malleable these systems are, is around the concept of the voice paragraph, which is essentially a way, like a prompt, as we've explained and explained, the prompt is essentially your instruction to the AI system in terms of getting it to do what you want it to do. And I think there's a lot of AI related content out there, and it's very, very easy to start to see what is AI produced content that doesn't have a good voice paragraph prompt behind it. It's very generic. I would love to know what your telltale signs are when you recognize an AI produced like piece of content. For me, it's like words like game changing. What are a couple of yours, Anne and Tyler?
Oh my goodness, there's so many. I'd have to think. There's a huge list that everyone was doing the AI exchange that I even add into it. Like in mine, this is do not use these words, or like do not speak in hyperbole. But it doesn't even, like, one of the hacks on this though is if you just talk, like literally talk into a voice recording, and then use that and say analyze the speaking style, and there's plenty of good like voice paragraph prompts out there, then it will start sounding like you and pull that out.
And that's like my favorite way to do it is without getting super technical on this, and it's not actually very technical once you have a bit of a structure in terms of how you prompt or instruct these systems, is what is called few-shot prompting, which is basically where you are able to take examples of work that you've done, content that you have, whether it's a blog article, whether it's an email, depending on how you're training the system, and giving the AI system examples of what sounds like you, what sounds like your brand, what are the things that, hi Christina, what are the things that you you say and you don't say. So there are really great ways
Yes.
to like be able to bring that experience that you've already got, your intellectual property, your brand voice, all the ways that you've documented the way that you speak and the way that you communicate, and enabling the AI system to recognize that that's how it needs to produce the content on your behalf.
Yeah. So to break it down to like exactly how to, I'll share that I have 3 primary voices. I have my email voice, I have my social media voice, and I have my like general everything else voice. And so with my email voice, I took like, I don't know, 8 emails that I felt like, well, these are pretty good emails that I had written. And I asked ChatGPT I say, ChatGPT, this is a basic voice prompt, won't get you perfect, but hey, ChatGPT, you are a linguistics professional. Please analyze the following emails and describe their tone, syntax, vibe, in terms of like authority, enthusiasm, declarative sentences. Tell me what I sound like. And then you put those emails in there. And what ChatGPT is going to give you is a description of how you sound. It's going to be like, your tone is enthusiastic and professional. It's, you use words like ... Your sentence length is ... You vary your sentences, etc. You're going to get that paragraph. And you're going to be like, that actually doesn't quite sound like me, or, hey, I'd like to sound a little bit better. So you might edit that. And you might say, vary sentences a lot, right? Then the next time you go to write an email, what you're going to do is you're going to take that paragraph and you're going to tell ChatGPT, I need you to write me an email using this voice. And you just cut and paste that paragraph in there. And you say the email is about ... right? And this will get you 90% of the way there. There are very finely tuned prompts and a prompt methodology that you can use. But I'll just share that if you're comfortable with 90%, this methodology will get you to 90%. So let's say all you want to do at first is make it easier to write your own emails, right? You're not writing for anybody else. It's pretty low stakes. That's how you do it. You have ChatGPT analyze your emails that you like, describe how you sound, and then you use that paragraph each time you need to write that kind of an email. What would you two add?
Yeah, the Suzanne just dropped in Nicole's voice prompt, which is like voice prompt, which is
that's the best one on around.
Yeah, like that is like the gold standard coming out of that community, and Nicole's really got the
Thank you
for sure.
Thank you, Suzanne.
Yeah.
And shout out to Nicole Leffer. If you don't follow Nicole on TikTok or on LinkedIn, run, don't walk. It's Leffer, Nicole Leffer. She's a queen in this area.
For sure. The one thing I would add in, because like what you said is like exactly right. Even without like Nicole's will take your work up to the next level if you drop that prompt in there to get your voice paragraph. The 2 other things I would add are, when you're doing that, ask it to, when it's describing it, to assign a numerical value of like 0 to 10 for each one of those, like the tone, the vibe, all those sorts of things, and tell it to like give it that. So then think of it as like, these are no code switching dials that you can tone down or turn up, of like, hey, I want to turn down the like Tyler's overly enthusiastic vibe in this email it's coming across, from like an 8 to let's dial it down to like 7 or 5 or whatever. And that gives you like the ability to like go in and really fine tune the way it's coming back at you. That's one thing. The other thing is in the context about you as the person writing it, or the brand that's writing it, and put that in triple backticks. So on your keyboard, that is the right underneath the escape key right here on my keyboard in the upper left-hand corner. So if you put the context about that you don't want to be included into the voice paragraph chat, like when it's talking. So if I say that, hey, I'm Tyler, I'm from Nashville, I'm 38, I'm married, have 2 kids, like all of this stuff, that it's helpful for the system to understand this about me, saying that if you really want to get wild with it, like put in personality profile stuff in there too. Like, what is your disc? What is your Enneagram? Those kinds of things. And then put that in triple backticks though, because you don't want it, you want it to have that as context, but not say that in the chat. Like, you don't need your email going back saying, hey, as an Enneagram number 7, I wanted to tell you hi from Light Magic's customer service team this morning. But it will dial it in. So yeah.
And I think that it's like, for me, it's well worth the effort to continuously kind of tweak. And so if you get a really good result, or if you get a result that can be tweaked, is to take the time to kind of like tweak it and build a really solid prompt. And that way you can start to truly be able to delegate to AI in a way that you find to be trustworthy. As an example, if you had, like, say, a newsletter that you were writing for your, whether it's internal or external for your company, you can actually really dial in that process of how the newsletter sounds, what areas does it cover, the structure of the newsletter. That's the magic of what can be delegated to AI. And that will literally cut the time that it would have taken you hours down into, perhaps minutes. But you need to take the time to actually dial in your voice paragraph and your prompting to be able to delegate it in a way that works really well.
So a couple of things that came up from what you two shared. One is like that I have had this big mental shift in how I approach work and my sense of a job well done. And I want to share that because I feel like I'm farther along than a lot of people, but what I hope and wish for you all is that you'll begin to think this way, because it's really a breakthrough when you do. So I used to consider my work product that, like, where I got like my zhuzh, my pride and joy of like, here is the most wonderful memo. Like, this is the memo to end all memos, and this is going to move things forward. Tyler and Sarah know I'm like a huge get shit done person. And I'd be like, oh, this is the best memo. Great. And that was my work product. But now my work product is my prompt. That's where I pour my energy in. So I will spend, especially when it's my first time with a particular type of project, I will spend way more time creating a beautiful prompt than I would spend on the output. Because my goal is that it's Tyler's phrase is go smooth to go fast, go smooth to go
slow is smooth, smooth is fast. There you go.
Slow is smooth, smooth is fast. So imagine if you get yourself to the point where every time you go to write one of those boring emails that you probably have to write every once in a while, you have your voice prompt and a format for that, right? That's going to take some time to dial in. Like, it takes a little bit of patience. We have to, like, that's just part of the gig here. But then, oh my God, 6 months later, you're still cranking out those emails. You don't have to send them to a colleague to proof them. You don't have to do that thing where you send the email and then 5 minutes later, you go back and you read it again, right? Like, imagine all the consternation that you can avoid. So spending time making the prompts. And then the other thing I want to share, and I don't want to get too technical about it because it can really be quite the rabbit hole, but do decide on a place where you're going to keep these prompts. So once you get a prompt, and Suzanne, who's in the comments, taught me about this the other day. Once you get a prompt that you really feel good about, put it in, whether you love Word or Google Sheets, whatever, or Trello, literally whatever works for your brain is the very best method. Put your prompt in there and make a note to yourself. Like, I created this in November. It's working pretty well, or in December, I added something. Make sure it's still working. Some note to yourself so you remember where you are in your journey of creating some of your like pillar, like core prompts that you're going to use again and again. Because I figure, and I'm going to turn this over to Sarah and Tyler to talk about brand voice, but I figure that if each of us have about 5 core prompts that we use at work, that equals, I think you could probably say a 20% increase in productivity or quality. There's some metric where you could probably see you get your banger, core 5 or 10 prompts, and your work goes to this level, right? So for those of us who are just joining, what we're talking about right now are specific use. Yes, Suzanne's OneNote is a thing of just absolute beauty. What we're talking about are use cases at work, and what we're talking about specifically is training ChatGPT to speak in a particular tone of voice or a particular format. And the second question I get, first I always get, ChatGPT can't talk like me, and the next one is ChatGPT can't talk like my brand. So Sarah, could you talk about how do you make ChatGPT talk like your brand?
Yeah. So before I go into that, I'd love to build on the point that you just made around, because it kind of go into each other, around if you are really dialing in, because I know that there's a lot of people here who are part of teams or managers in organizations, and trying to figure out, well, 2024 is coming, we know AI is the future, how do we encourage our teams, how do we get consistency among our teams in terms of how we use these tools, and starting what's called a prompt library, whether you host it in OneNote or in Notion, or if you're part of the AI Exchange community, you know what's going on over there. But part of being able to have that consistency around brand voice, around tone, around all those things that are really, really important, because organizations spend a lot of money to get things figured out, is to have a centralized prompt library, and enabling your team of AI enthusiasts, let's say, who are playing with these prompts and are iterating on them and improving them, to essentially be able to save them somewhere centralized that other people can then use. Because then you have one source of truth for your organization when it comes to things like brand voice, and with things like being able to have consistency across all of your different outreach channels, whether that's through chatbots or through your customer success teams or through sales teams, marketing teams, is you have that one consistent brand voice and brand tone that is utilized by the organization in general. And I think that when it comes to having something around something that's centralized and people who are in charge, one of the things that just to keep in mind is that these large language models, like what ChatGPT is built on, or whether you use Claude or whatever model you use, they change over time. So when these models change over time, you will notice that your prompts might not have the same effect or are slightly different. So you want to be able to have version control, in a sense, and somebody who is in charge, or a team that is in charge of ensuring that whatever prompts you have built are adapted and are kind of reviewed over time, so that your results are always consistent. I feel like I've overtalked and overshared, but I'll popcorn to Tyler on this.
No, you can't overshare about this stuff. I love talking about this. And voice paragraph prompting is one of the foundational things that you have to really dial in. So for yourself personally and for your team and the brand. So I mean, it's good for us to really hone in on this, because it is so important. And to your point, talking about prompt drift, where it's going as updates get rolled out and the models, or they quit acting quite the same, that's where versioning and keeping notes, like a prompt journal, maybe, I don't know if that's a thing yet, but maybe you call it that, like a prompt journal, of just your thoughts on how the prompts are reacting. So what I will do a lot of the times is I like Claude a lot. I'm a fanboy. I will put in there my voice prompt, what the message is about, if I'm just trying to do something quick and I'm not trying to automate it, and it will spit out something really good. I will then go through it and make all of my revisions and then give it back to it. And usually I might go back and forth in it 1 or 2 times, depending on what the thing is. And Then once I get to a finalized version, I'll say, this is the final edit that I did. Go back and update the voice paragraph prompt with these edits in mind. So we have that moving forward for the next time I come in this thread, like to do that. That works for all sorts of things. But that is definitely like one of those key prompts that you want to spend the time, take the time to work on. As far as like brand voice, that's a whole nother thing because now you're talking about like the vibe of the business, how we what are the business decisions, like how do we answer certain types of questions, what are things that we don't say, like when you're getting into like customer service or like email newsletters, professional just communications back and forth. And there's lots of tools that are coming out to help with that. You can go really in the weeds with it and bring on like an AI operations team, like that stuff. That's something that we do, like we come in and help do those sorts of things. If it's something you want to start toying with, even just some like early apps would be, I use Audio Pen a lot and I use Blaze AI a lot. That's come out here. And you can actually put in a lot of your information about your company, about your brand in there, and it will help you generate these sorts of like voice paragraphs. So then you can have it write a product description or have it write like a blog post or whatever that it doesn't do for you. I mean, it can, but I don't recommend that. I recommend it like being your creative partner in a lot of these things. And
Yeah.
that's the distinct difference. I mean, I've got my, you can't see it, human in the loop sweatshirt on today. Like I'm really in the camp of drive the efficiency, but it doesn't have to be one. I don't want it to be 100% automated. That's never the thing. Like you want it to be co-piloted to a sense so that it stops off at a person to be that checking point to give it feedback on whether it's good or not. And that's a process. Like that takes time and that takes iteration, even on your brand voice stuff, because your brand is going to change. You're going to have new context. You have to go back and put that into the prompt of like, oh, hey, by the way, like this just happened in the business. That's a pretty big deal. We need to add that into like, let's think of an example, like giving it a context for an email campaign. Let's pretend this was back before Black Friday and I'm in an e-commerce business. Be like, hey, we have a Black Friday sale coming up. So we want to subtly start like interjecting that into our copy somehow to start like promoting that. You can put that sort of stuff into your brand prompts, and that's use case dependent, right? But that's what I'm saying. Like that's how, as you learn prompting as a skill, or as you find a tool that helps you with that, or you bring on a team of people to help you learn how to do that or do it for you, that's where you really get the gold out of this stuff. And you get away from where folks are like, LLMs don't sound like me, or Chat GPT doesn't sound like me. It's just too corny. The people that really have it good, you don't realize that they're using AI to do it. Like it's that good.
Couple of things. One is, can one of you two bring Michael up, because Donnie's working on my computer while we're here. And I've got a question for Michael. Two things. One is regarding new stuff to train your brand voice on. One of the best examples of using ChatGPT for brands is storytelling. So what I do is I'll take really good stories from like the organization's newsletter, or say somebody wrote a beautiful talk for the executive director, or somebody wrote a piece in an impact report about a specific, I work in the nonprofit sector, a specific beneficiary. I'll take those juicy nuggets, and that becomes what feeds my content about that brand. So let's say there's a news story, or like in my world, let's say there's a new gift announcement, right? It's public information. A donor did something amazing. Well, that's one of the things that I want when I'm working with ChatGPT. I want that content to inform what my output is. So I won't like take it too far into the weeds, but I'll just say that the capability exists there for you to pull all that stuff about your brand into one place and train the large language model on how to talk about your brand. And I think it's a perfect example of, if you're listening to this and you're thinking, oh, okay, like for real, it can talk like my brand, and you have like a little bit of willingness to explore that. It's a perfect use case for taking a deeper dive. And it's one of the things, so we set up this really accessible, intensive program to help you. Accessible and intensive sounds like an oxymoron, but it's accessible on your side, intensive on our side. So we'll work with you to figure out in 2024, do you want to pursue a big project like this? Do you want to pursue using AI for your brand voice, for your leadership voices, for how you guys talk about yourselves in all sorts of different formats? So I don't know if somebody can pin the intensive on the screen, but the way that it works is you reach out to us and we just start a conversation about how you might want to even consider using AI in 2024. And this gets into one of the biggest examples of how we would step you through the process. Cool. Michael, so thank you. We're so glad you're here. What we're talking about is, well, as you know, how we can apply AI at work. And we have just taken a deep dive into our voices, our personal, our leadership, our brand voice. And then the other use case that we haven't double clicked on yet is that Tyler brought up was meeting preparation. So I don't know if, I mean, I know that you are probably in, I'm going to guess somewhere between like 4 and 7 meetings a day in your life. Yeah. So can you talk to us about how people can use AI to prepare for meetings?
Yeah, well, I think the best way is if you have repeating meetings. Well, I guess it depends on the kind of meetings you have, right? So for me, I have a bunch of meetings that I meet with folks on a recurring basis, and so getting the information from the meeting itself, having AI go through, synthesize it, pull out the to-dos, the open questions, basically like a good meeting summary. I'm a terrible note taker myself, so I sort of rely on that to sort of like help me keep track of all the things that have been going on. And then when I go to prepare for the new meeting, I'll ask it, here's what I've done on the to-dos to this point. Like, what would be a good way? How do I synthesize that so that I can present it as an update or just help myself get ready to talk about the things that I've done? Also, maybe having it come up with like, what questions should I be going into the meeting with so that I know that I get what I need uh, to continue the work forward, and just sort of like being in that cycle. And the place where I haven't gotten to yet, but am looking to do, is to automate that process. So instead of me having to go in and grab the meeting summaries and then go and put it into a model and extract those things, like how do I have to automate that so that I can have it presented to me as I'm going through.
So Michael, when you say automate, can you say a little bit more about that? Because it's interesting how, at least in my evolution, like I get so much traction from just getting the information out of ChatGPT that I sometimes forget that there's a whole other step that I could take where, for example, with meeting prep, I could do all this stuff with meeting prep, but then wouldn't it be lovely if it sent it over to my Google Docs or my Word or something so that it's there in almost like an agenda format? So can you talk about how automations play into this?
Yeah, I mean, so for instance, I use Zoom a lot. So I'll get a summary from Zoom. It does that for me, right? There's nothing to automate there, and it shows up on my email. But what then I have to go do is I have to go to my email. I have to get it. I then take that summary, put it in with my other work. I'll feed it to ChatGPT to do it, to like extract additional things from it. Like I'm doing all that manually, and then when I go to update my work and get ready for the next meeting, I have to then take that, put it into Chat GPT. So it's not that challenging to have Zapier or some kind of automation tool go and pick up those emails, send it to the model with a prompt that I'm just going to copy and paste anyway, right? So I already know what the prompt is, so there's no creative piece to it. It's just me mechanically moving those
Mhm.
summaries through the pipeline myself, and it's just not that challenging to have some automation tool pick it up from my email, send it to the model, send it to my Google Doc so it's there. Uh, and then, maybe I haven't thought this through yet, but like, how do I then take that Google Doc and send it? Or, I guess it would be like, take it in through and just have to go through all the steps so that I'm ready for the next meeting. I just haven't kind of like done that work yet, but all the
Yeah.
tools to do that are available, and it's not like a custom development process to kind of automate those
No.
things. It's just like out of the box. It probably would take me a half hour. I just haven't done it.
I have a true confessions moment, which is that I'm going to say it was 2 years ago. Okay, for those of you, I don't know if anyone can relate to this, but 2 years ago, I had never heard or at least internalized the word automations. I did not know what an automation was. I knew that things happen magically. I didn't know what the term was. I didn't know how systems connected to each other. I was grateful for it, but definitely it was sort of like things just happen magically and some other people figure it out, and I didn't even know the word. So I share that as like a little bit of a pep talk. If you're like, gosh, this stuff all sounds really great, but it's like so foreign to me, that there is a little bit of a learning curve. But once you like dive in and know what some of the terms mean, like an automation, I'm just going to say how I would describe it, because this was news to me, is like, if you have something, if you have like, let's say you have an agenda that needs to, well, I don't know. I'm trying to think of like a good example, you guys, of an automation that would be,
I was thinking you were going straight with tab A slot B. That's like the go-to phrase that is like perfect, because it's really just like what Michael was saying, like either having it, knowing if it's a recurring meeting, like knowing what the topic's going to be about. And I really love the thought of like, what questions do I need to ask during that, to think about that. And then if you just have some sort of like form factor that either your company already uses for like a meeting agenda notes, or if you want to have that, but are have never been able to get there, it's not that hard to have it put in like the inverted pyramid style, so that the most important things are at the top that you need to get done first. That's a really good way to put that in there. So if you tell it that, even in the automation, that once the your calendar invite shows up that we have this recurring meeting on Mondays, like we have a recurring Monday team meeting for Light Magic, and we know the projects that we've been working on, that can feed into the workflow for the automation as context. It knows what I do in my role and what projects I'm working on. So that could literally land in my Slack channel in an inverted summary form with the questions and the talking points I needed to bring out for that morning. And you can do that in Zapier. That's not something that you have to know how to put together yourself. Like that's if you don't want to, right? That's like you can hire people for that. To Ann's point, like if you're not into this stuff, then that's what folks like us are there for. But if you are, there's like so much information out on the internet, and even we're going to start putting more tutorials out there too of how to do some of these things. But those are really
The clue to me is when I feel like an automation, because like when I'm like physically doing something in a repetitive way and it's sort of mindless, it's like,
yeah.
oh, like a computer should be doing that. Like the people don't need to do that. There's ways to have, especially when there's no creative input whatsoever. I mean, when there's automations can be applied to things that do require some creativity. Maybe that's a little more work to do, but if like I'm just doing the same thing over and over and over again, that is completely something a computer should do. There's no question about that.
And I think it
This is,
highlights the like different ways that you can interact with these AI systems. Like a lot of people are very familiar with ChatGPT and interacting with it, and that's like, the way that you chat or create with AI. But you can also then delegate and automate to AI, which I feel like is an area that is really people are starting to understand the benefits of that. But you have to get from like what we talked about right from the beginning.
yes, Scott.
From the like the prompt and having the fundamentals, which is what the chat teaches you, because you start to recognize what is a good output that you would want to share and put out into the world and what is not and what needs to be tweaked. And then as you get really good at that skill set for you and your teams, then that's when you can really like delegate your work that you find really time consuming and really annoying and that like takes up a lot of headspace and time, and delegate it to an AI system that's really good at that. And that frees you and your team to do what humans are, made to do and made to do really well.
Absolutely. So we talk about it as, amplifying your humanity. And it's what fascinates me is the intersection between something like AI and automation and our culture. So a second ago, I went over and I grabbed this book. It's Radical Candor by Kim Scott. And this made its rounds a couple of years ago. But one of the big takeaways is that in every single meeting, there's a moment at the end where either it's like, if it's a group meeting, how did this meeting go? Or what are your takeaways? And in a one-on-one, it's making it routine that we have a conversation about how we're working together, right? A feedback moment where it's not all of a sudden something has gone wrong, something's weird. Now we need to have a critical conversation. It's every time we meet, we have a conversation about how things are going. How am I supporting you? What's on your nerves, etc. And so the reason why I grabbed it is because to me, it's just like, this is the kind of thing where, let's say you have a team agenda format, and before the meeting, it goes out and people contribute their ideas so that everybody's fully prepared and present for the meeting. And one of those things on there is, here's our moment to talk about our work process, our group process, or a debrief on an event, or a piece of critical feedback, where you don't have to. It's like you can take your leadership. You can automate psychological safety a little bit, right, Michael? Let's say you are just saying to your team, every time we meet, we share feedback. And that's just our safe place. And you're able to automate that and make it more objective and less triggering. Just an example of like how all these things come together. And so when we're working with clients, I think it's a good example of how we work with clients. And I'll just share, because lots of people wonder, like, how does this actually look? So if we were to do an intensive with like a work group leader, it would look like, we begin by asking you questions about what you're doing with AI. Doesn't even need to be you're doing anything or not, right? What's your comfort level? How much decision-making authority do you have? Do you have access to a budget? Do you need a budget? What are some of the business operational things that are driving everyone crazy? Where are you getting on each other's nerves? What are the things that you're not getting to, like revenue producing activities that you're not getting to because you're doing all this nonsense? Like, this is probably a Gen X thing, but I have this ever-present wound from mousing too much for so many years. I will know that my life is properly automated when this wound goes away. It's like a full-on cyst. So, hi, internet. So then what we would do is we would look at what are some of those processes. And we might say to you, okay, here's an automation. Here's some AI you could put into your work group processes. And here's an automation. So some AI and automation, bam, here's what you get. You can include this in like how your group works together. But what we don't do is just leave it at that. The next phase of the conversation is, okay, how does this impact your team? Right? So maybe you had an executive assistant who was routinely going and getting agenda items from everybody, right? Did they like doing that? Did it give them a feeling of power over what that meeting looked like? Or did they not like doing it because they were getting blown off, right? Does this mean we can deploy them for something else? Will different generations respond differently to being asked by a chatbot or something what agenda items to add? We talk to you after we develop a solution. We talk to you about what it looks like downstream when you implement a solution, so that it's not just a okay, these people gave us some AI stuff and now, we'll just figure out later what we do about it. So I just wanted to share.
I
Yeah,
love
go
that.
for
Like,
it.
I want to give you some more like boots on the ground examples, to use Josh's phrase.
Please.
So, like, one of the ways that, like I said earlier, alluded to earlier, is that I record like almost everything now, not because I'm like trying to be weird about it, but because I have ADHD, and so my brain, there's like all the things are going on in my brain all the time whenever I'm speaking with a client or doing a Zoom call or having a team meeting, doing a sales call, whatever. Like, I will be present in the conversation and also have another conversation going on in my head about all the things that need to be getting done too. And by recording that, that is like, you hear the phrase second brain. That is the context to
Mm.
throw into your second brain all the time. So for a really good example, for the real estate agents, Rob and Seth, that I was talking about earlier, we record their our meetings, but have also started teaching them to do that for sales calls. Like, so when someone calls them and says, "Hey, I'm thinking about listing my house for sale," and then they normally would have to go and schedule a meeting with them, go meet them in person, go through this entire checklist of questions that they have that they're going through. And then during that, they're having to like take the time to either write that down or jot that down. And it pulls them out of the flow, because they're not just like here thinking about like being here in the conversation. They're like, okay, wait up, I meant to write that down. Or they just don't, like, they don't do it. And that creates like a bad experience or delivery on the other end, where they should have written something down. And because it's hard to do all that stuff simultaneously, like, that's where recording and then running this through a prompt chain helps, because we'll take that recording. We know the form that they were trying to map that to on the MLS document. This could be like any sort of like sales process that you have. And then it will extract the information from those questions and those talking points in the actual transcript of the call and drop them back into that form, like for real, in an automation. That is huge. Like, that is just like, they don't have to think about that anymore. They literally just set their phone down and talk. And then when they get back to the office, not only do they have the complete record of that, it fills out for the form for them, and it can put that information back into their CRM. Because having that stuff in your CRM as additional client context information for how you need to communicate for them, like where they are in whatever that sales process looks like or customer service process looks like, that is where you're really gonna like, you have superhuman memory now that you capture every single
Mhm.
detail that just without it is not possible. So, or not for me at least. I'm not superhuman in that way. Yeah.
I do love that example because there's things that in an ideal world you would do but don't because it doesn't feel like it's worth your time.
Mhm.
And being able to lay out these automations that you can just kind of have those things done for you in a way that feels new.
Even like non-automated. So shout out Will King. I remember him sharing this example early on when we met, that there was another person in his local community that was doing AI coaching or consulting or whatnot too. And he wanted to reach out to them just to connect and introduce and like meet someone, because it's rare that you find someone else in the space, especially locally. And he wanted to reach out, but do it in a very collaborative kind of way. And so he was able to determine with an LLM, he thought that she was probably a high D on her disc profile. And he knew what he was in the disc. And so, to Anne's point of like, who are you talking to when you're having an LLM write this thing, and how will they best receive the message that you're going to send to them? So he wrote it in his tone of voice, knowing how he interacts as what based off of his personality profile, and to her, knowing what her age generation is, knowing what her assumed disc
Mhm.
profile is, and then sent the message. And like, and it actually worked. Like, it wasn't, it
Yeah.
was, it even like called it that. It's just the way that it wrote it. And it led to them having like a collaborative, like they got to know each other, where it could have been
Yes.
misconstrued because there's so much left to like the imagination in the written word. If you like, people take texts and DMs and all that kind of stuff wrong all the time. So this really helps dial that in.
Yeah, I think if this really floats your boat, like listening to and getting an idea of actual use cases, That's something that we do on Tuesdays and Thursdays in our AI applied sessions here on LinkedIn. We are spending a lot of time hanging out on LinkedIn with you all lately. So yeah, Tuesdays and Thursdays, we go deep into like one particular use case, whether it's something we've built for a client or something that we've built for ourselves. Because one of the things that we're finding is that people understand the value of, are starting to understand the value and that the future is AI, but it's still really abstract. You're like, how? I get it, but it's like, but how? And so these are what these sessions are about on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Obviously, we've got one tomorrow. And if you have specific use cases or things that you like are stuck on or want to workshop, put them in the comments, because even if we don't get to it tomorrow, we'll probably get to it next week.
Yes.
And on Wednesdays and Fridays, they're like our jam sessions where we like to hang and have more kind of like conversations around different topics and different industries and different like places where we would find AI. So hopefully you can join us on those. We're going to be like putting out all of the invites very shortly for tomorrow and the following sessions.
Perfect. To zoom it out just a smidgen bit, to put all these ideas into the context of what AI is going to look like in 2024. Here's my take, and I would love for each of you to chime in with kind of your truth bombs around this. But certainly for me, and for what I've seen, like on all the podcasts and like the OpenAI stuff, drama, I'll use the word drama, and like learning about all these cool tools. For me, 2023 was like a sandbox. It was like finding all these cool little things to start to tinker with, right? It was like, what is this thing? What does this do? Do I need this to build my sandcastle? No, I don't need it for my sandcastle, but I might need it for this other thing that I'll make someday. It was just really juicy and also overwhelming. Like learning about a new tool every single day is legitimately overwhelming. It's cognitively overwhelming. And you have a constant sense of feeling like you're behind. Here's my pep talk for 2024. I think that in 2024, we will all have a few tools that we use all the time, and we will be able to turn down the volume a bit on some of the new cool tools that are out there, right? Are we going to want to know about the latest thing that's making kick-ass movies? Absolutely, that's fun. But when we show up at work every day, do we need to know how to make movies? Most of us, the answer is no, right? What you need to do is be able to write an email more quickly, that you feel confident in, that you're sure isn't written in, you're sure doesn't sound passive aggressive, right? So hang in there through the rest of 2023. The zeitgeist is turning to implementation and integration. We will be talking mostly about how you actually use the tools in 2024. That's my prediction. I'll hand it off to Michael.
Yeah, do I have a prediction? I don't know if I have a prediction for 2024, but I think the thing I focus on a lot is like what's different, right? Because AI has been around a long time, automations have been around for a long time. And the thing that really changed this year is the capacity for these models to understand language and I guess in the zone of like images and things like, content creation. And it's just opened up this whole space of problems that couldn't really be addressed using AI or automations previously. And now it's like everyday work that we sort of just took for granted that we would have to do, or someone would have to do, is now opened up to AI and automation space in a way that it never has been before. And I think that, like, just as people start to think about, I would love not to have to do whatever it is every day. It's increasingly easier to have a computer do it for you, and it sort of opens you up to like do the things that are actually more interesting or can help your business grow, as opposed to the mechanics of keeping the business going.
Totally. Sarah, how about you?
I agree with both of you. I think this year has been very hype-ish. and around AI. And when I first started getting interested in this, it was, as you know, Anne was saying, it's like you cannot keep up, and it's kind of depressing because you thought you had to know everything. And I literally had to actually turn my brain off from all of that, from all of the new tools and all those things that were coming out, and really consolidate, like Anne said, into like the few tools that were actually taking my work and my business forward. I think next year in 2024, we're going to see a shift less from seeing AI as a tool to more as something that we interact with occasionally. I feel like we're going to see AI as a more integrated part of how we work. And that is the whole co-pilot kind of co-create creative partner kind of mentality, where you learn how to work with the AI systems. So it kind of becomes part of your daily workflow. And I don't necessarily think it's going to be January and we get there. It's going to be a process. And it starts with learning how to prompt ChatGPT, like we talked about right at the beginning. You know, it's starting with having an understanding of how these systems work and what is a good output and what is a bad output and what needs to be tweaked. And then being able to systematize what you learn from that into basically AI systems that can scale. And I say that not from the point of view like it sounds really terrifying, because you're like, well, that sounds big and massive. But I know my colleagues know this about me, but I'm such a fan of small wins. Like you choose one thing, like you choose one thing. It could be the newsletter. It could be something that is a real pain in the butt, right? Something that is repetitive and that is time consuming and that is taking your focus away from what you really want to do and what you're great at. And that most probably, AI systems are very good at doing on your behalf once you train it the right way. And it's taking that one task and, you know, delegating to AI, iterating and iterating until you feel like you got it right, and then building and then going to the next task. And it's not necessarily like this whole, okay, let's AIify our company today. It's not about that. It's let's AIify a task and then work up to a workflow and then work up to a process. And that kind of step-by-step process of having that cumulative benefit, that is the stuff that's going to take your business from here to here, or your work or your role, whatever it is. So yeah, that's my take on 2024. I'm going to popcorn to Tyler.
Let me first, you said start with a task, then it becomes a workflow, then
Like
it's kind of like a process.
Yeah.
So start with a little baby step, right? And then, you know, it's not a guarantee that it's going to become your whole process. It's your first step to see, do you like it like this? Do you like it like that? Do you want to scrap it? Is it easier to do it the old way? Are you happy with having this thing on your hand? If so, continue. But the possibility is there that it becomes part of your work operations that makes life easier. Okay, Tyler.
I've been thinking about this a lot, actually, as far as what does 2023 look like and what is 2024 going to look like. 2023 went from is definitely hype cycle, and the hype cycle continues. I saw this morning, and I've got to go research this. You know, when we get off, is Gemini finally dropped today, which is Google's new model. So it's just one more thing to keep up with, right? But I think we're still going to have the hype cycle, but AI this year was for people who are early adopters and willing to like go down the rabbit hole to figure out how to use this stuff and to learn how to use it. So it's like, how do I learn how to do math, the foundational frameworks to know how to use the calculator? Like everyone in high school always was like, well, just whatever. It's like, why do I need to learn how to do this stuff? I'm going to have a calculator with me all the time when I'm older. And of course, we have a supercomputer in our pockets now, not just a calculator. But this year was the year for a lot of people of learning the foundations in AI. I think that 2024 and the shiny new tool thing, because we went from unconnected GPT-3 to 3.5 turbo. When did 3.5 turbo come out? Did that come out next? Then we had plugins. Then we got into
Plug
the
in.
web browser, it got connected to the internet. And then it like, where do we go from there? Then we had GPT-4 came out. GPT-4 got connected to the internet. Like Claude's mixed in there. I'm just saying, and they keep updating the cutoff date on it too. And then when 4.5 drops, GPT, custom GPTs, and the API assistance drop here back in the beginning of November, that I think turning the corner into 2024 changes like what the future of work is going to look like this next year. Because like now all of a sudden you don't have to do all of this stuff that we did to like on ramp to learn how to get really good outputs out of these models. Like now you're going to have these assistants that people who have like already been working in this space are going to be able to make it so that folks on your team who have no desire to like learn what AI is, but they know they need to use it, they can just interact with these things and get that like really leveled up ability in their work. And so it's integration. Like to your point, Sarah, I think 2024 is the year of integration. My hopes is that in doing that, because this is the thing that really concerns me, is that as people are doing this, you need to be really thoughtful of how you're going to bring this stuff into your business. Because when we talk to folks about this, it really comes from a place of like fear. If they're nervous about it, and there's fears of a lot of different things. There's fears of like security risks, fears of like, is this going to take away my job? Is this going to render me irrelevant? Like, are the robots going to take over? Like, and everything in between, right? Like, I've heard it all in the last year. And my hope is that we move from a place of fear into a more abundance mindset out of scarcity and realize that there's a new way that we can work like in the future with this stuff, because I really think that that's where we're going to get to. And I think that that is where when people start adopting it and more people have that aha moment of, oh wow, this is it, this is what we've been waiting for. Like, because it's been, people just haven't heard about it yet, or if they have, they're afraid of it. And a lot of the stuff that makes the headlines out into the general public is negative stuff. And so I'm hoping too that there's a lot more like positive work that gets shown out there, positive impact of how this stuff is doing. Like one of the things that we've chosen to do is work with people who we want to help them amplify their voice. And so being able to see more of those sorts of people show up out in the world to do their work in a great way. And yeah, and doing that in a really thoughtful way. Because when we come in and do this for organizations, or as you bring this into your organization, what is your game plan for how do we take care of our people? How do we fix this when like someone's job just got, or a part of their job got rendered irrelevant? Like, what's our game plan for that? Are we going to work less? Are we going to have a better work-life balance? Are we going to get to that stuff that we just haven't been able to get to? Like, that is the strategy conversations that you need to be having. And then the governance stuff on top of that. Like, there's so much. Like, I'm excited for it just because we get the opportunity to talk to a bunch of different people about this kind of stuff every day, and it's a fun job. And bringing more people to that, into this world and incorporating it, I think is when we really start to see like a cultural shift. Yeah.
Yeah, I really think that it could feel like this big daunting thing that might be like hanging over your head because you're thinking it's like, and it's 2023, we're going to 2024, and AI has been top of the list in all of the conversations and discourse around a lot of things that have been going around. But it doesn't have to be that that scary big thing. And that's why we wanted to bring in something that was like really light touch and a way for organizations to know where to start. Because I think that that's the biggest thing, is that it could feel this overwhelming thing, but it actually is about getting clarity on where to start. So if you're in that space, if you're like part of a team, or it's your business or part of an organization, and you're just wanting to make sure that you can get a good night's sleep and relax because you know where you're heading towards in 2024, that's what we do as part of our AI Adoption Intensive. we developed like a custom blueprint essentially for you that enables you to get clarity over the direction that, you know, is the right next step for you and your organization. So hope to see you all in my DMs with questions. Feel free to reach out to me. I'm totally available to answer questions on that.
Same. That's what I was going to wrap it up with is, you know, feel free to reach out to any of us anytime. Like we each have our own little window into the soul of AI and what 2024 is going to look like. And we're here to answer questions. Like that's what we do all day, every day. It's our joy and our business. So please feel free to reach out to us. Like Sarah said, we've got on tomorrow, we'll do an applied use case. On Friday, we have just a hangout, and then repeat next week with Tuesday use case, Wednesday, this, Thursday use case, Friday hangout. We're getting all of our stuff together.
All the things.
So thank everybody so much for being here. We appreciate you. If you watched it on the replay, thank you, thank you. Feel free to drop your comments below. We go back and we review, so we will catch your question, but do feel free to reach out to us. And I want to thank Sarah, Michael, and Tyler for being here and for launching this great adventure of Light Magic AI together. It's really,
thank you for
really
hosting, and you're an excellent hostess.
Absolutely. All right. Goodbye,
Bye.
everybody.
Bye,
Thank
everyone.
you.
See ya.
See ya.